Welcome to High Ticket Selling for Entrepreneurs. My name is Joe Beck, founder of The Sales Activist, and I am excited to be with you here this morning to talk about this very important topic. So, before I jump in and get started, I'm going to take an opportunity just to introduce myself to you. Um, my name is Joe Beck, 35 plus year sales and business development veteran. I've worked with everything from Fortune 50 companies all the way down to solopreneurs. Across my career, I've had the great honor and pleasure to coach, train, or mentor over 3,500 sales professionals and entrepreneurs. And I've been involved in hundreds of millions of dollars of transactions for companies that I've worked with and for. And the reason I share that with everybody is so that you understand that there's nothing that special about me. I come from some very humble beginnings, put myself in a situation where I learned through work experience a lot of what I'm going to be talking about here today about high ticket selling. And I've been very, very fortunate along the way to learn from some very, very patient and understanding mentors. So for today, I want to kick things off by starting with a few basic things that I think everybody needs to understand. The first is this: if you are an entrepreneur and you are struggling selling your high ticket service, product, or offering, you're not alone. Okay. There's nothing wrong with you. This happens for a lot of different reasons at a lot of different times. Many times people come into entrepreneurship and they have an expertise, a talent, a skill set, a mastery around one particular topic, but they aren't necessarily skilled or have not had the opportunity to learn the skills of selling that offering, product, or service. And it's important that you understand one of the major fallacies about selling is that there is no such thing as a born salesperson. Okay, sales skills are no different than any other skills. They can be learned, they can be taught, you can develop them. So, for those of you who are joining us today who say to yourselves, I'm not a born salesperson, or that person over there, they are a born salesperson. You've heard all of the catchphrases around that. There isn't such a thing as a born salesperson. Every single person who is successful in sales has gotten that way from a combination of investing in themselves, investing time, energy, dedication towards perfecting their craft. So the reason I start off any presentation to entrepreneurs about that is I want you to understand that there isn't anything that you need to have coming into this to get to where you want to go. Now, some people, quite honestly, could be a bit more outgoing, or they might be more comfortable communicating. And as a result, they may seem like they're a better salesperson. But the reality is, sales skills are learned, not unlike any other skill that's out there. So for today, we're going to be talking all about high ticket selling as an entrepreneur and the challenges that come with it, and the reasons why entrepreneurs face a slightly different set of challenges and opportunities compared to some people who are out there perhaps selling for another company. So let's start with the number one challenge for entrepreneurs when it comes to high ticket selling. And it's what I call the entrepreneur's dilemma. The entrepreneur's dilemma. Now, what exactly is that? Well, the entrepreneur's dilemma is the reality and the state that an entrepreneur, unfortunately, has to wear many, many different hats within their business. They need to focus on sales, operations, marketing, fulfillment, all the different things that come up when you're an entrepreneur. Many times you are forced to focus on a lot of different things and wear a lot of different hats. If you are a newer entrepreneur and you don't yet have a team of people that are doing some of those things for you, it's even more challenging because you are now faced trying to do all those things for yourself or reach out to resources that you can help you do those things. And that dilemma impacts a lot of different entrepreneurs. A lot of different entrepreneurs struggle with creating sales momentum and success because of the entrepreneur's dilemma, because they are wearing those multiple hats. And it's important to acknowledge and understand that if you're an entrepreneur who is in that exact situation, maybe you're a solopreneur and you pretty much do everything within your business to fulfill, sell, market. You do the accounting, you do everything in your business. It's very challenging to create sales momentum. Now, why is that? Why is that? Well, because sales and business development in general, in and of itself, can be a full-time job or role within any other company, right? But when you're an entrepreneur and you're forced to juggle all of those things and many others, it can create a natural competition for your time. And it results in some other things that happen as a byproduct of that dilemma. And let me just give you an example. And maybe this is something that has happened to you, or you've been through, or you've experienced, or in the least you've heard of this impacting other people's success. It's something that I call that roller coaster effect, right? You go out and let's say in month one, you have a great sales month and you deliver a nice amount of new business coming into your small business as an entrepreneur. It's exciting, energy is high, everything is exactly peaceful in the environment, right? And then you realize, well, now I need to implement and fulfill what I've now sold. And if you are providing a product, service, or offering that requires implementation specifically, and it requires your time to implement, well, now you shift your focus from sales to fulfillment. And not unlike anything else that you might be working on in life, when you take focus away from something, you lose momentum. It loses energy. It doesn't have that same movement forward that you had on it when you were focusing on it. So when you go through the roller coaster effect, what happens is 1 month you may have a great sales month, but the next month or maybe 2 or even longer, you shift into fulfillment mode. And now your focus is all the way over here on fulfillment, which is great. It's necessary. It's required. But now you've taken your attention away from the sales effort. Okay. You've taken your attention away from that sales effort. And as a result, your sales results start to decrease. So that roller coaster effect is you're running, going uphill. You're at the top, the pinnacle. You achieve that sales result, and all of a sudden you're racing down the hill towards fulfillment. It makes it much, much more challenging to get back to that sales result that you had previously, because now you're in fulfillment. You got to go back up that hill to get to the sales success again. It could create many different challenges as an entrepreneur. So if any of this sounds familiar to you, or worse, you're going through something like that right now, good month, bad month, 2 bad months, 3 bad months, another good month. If you are experiencing that for yourself right now, stay tuned. I promise you what we're going to talk about today is going to help that process, but also you can get through it. I want to share this with everybody. You can get through it. You can level out the roller coaster ride. It won't be as crazy. It'll be much more sustained. You won't feel that pressure. But under all of this, the entrepreneur's dilemma is, while you are dealing with these challenges, opportunities pass you by. While you are in implementation mode, you miss opportunities at other business. You miss opportunities to meet new prospects, people that could potentially be a client for you. And sometimes that missed opportunity, that cost of that missed opportunity is massive in your business. So it's very, very important that you figure out how to level that off so you are able to balance and figure out a way to maintain focus on your sales effort. Okay. Somebody always needs to be looking at sales in your business. There needs to be a focused person on sales in your business at all times. Now, that could be you as the entrepreneur. It could be somebody adjacent to you, somebody on your team. It could even be somebody from the outside of your organization, but somebody needs to have focus on your sales in your business. Somebody has to own it, speak for it, and focus on it every day. And with entrepreneurs, that can create a challenge. That can create a problem. Now, maybe you're not yet ready for somebody else to be doing that. Maybe you're not yet ready to have a team member that can take that responsibility for you. So you now have to do it all yourself, hence the roller coaster effect. That entrepreneur's dilemma is real. In fact, It's so real that the whole reason that the name of our sales coaching brand, the Sales Activist, comes from the idea that every organization, big or small, needs to have somebody who is focused on sales, an activist for it, somebody who is passionate about it, that focuses on sales and momentum in that business. And when a business doesn't have that, and it doesn't matter whether it's a large company, a small company, whether it's got 100 employees or one employee, if somebody is not solely focused on sales, that business will ultimately struggle. I speak to business owners and have spoken to business owners on this topic for many, many years. And it is amazing to me how many businesses, even successful businesses on the surface, don't have somebody who is solely responsible for sales. Now, I don't mean solely responsible for generating sales, although they can. I mean somebody who is responsible to speak for it. I'll give you an example. I worked with a company a few years ago that had 3 different partners. All 3 partners played a role in every aspect of their business: sales, operations, fulfillment, finance. Like, they were all over every single part of their business together, the 3 of them. And one of the questions that I asked them is, who owns sales in the business? And all 3 of them said, well, we all do. And I would ask them again, who owns sales in the business? Who is responsible for it? And their answer was, well, we are each equally responsible for it. And ultimately, it came down to the fact that they were holding themselves back because instead of having somebody who was focused on it and intently looking at it, there were many times where people in that business, all very sharp entrepreneurs, by the way, extremely bright people, there were times where all 3 of them were looking at other things in their business. They were focused on other priorities. They weren't focusing on sales. And I pinpointed certain points in their recent experience that highlighted this. And you could, like clockwork, see where the sales numbers just petered out and fell down dramatically because the 3 of them were working on other things. So if you find yourself in this situation, it's something that you need to address and fix. So today we're going to be digging into this in detail. We're going to be talking about all of the elements that you need to master in high ticket selling as an entrepreneur. And the entrepreneur's dilemma, though, is the state of affairs that most entrepreneurs have to deal with. So you need to figure out skills to break through that. Today, we're going to dive into some of that. But let's go back to the beginning. Let's go back to, before we get to the point that somebody needs to focus on it, let's go back to the beginning. Let's talk about the most important elements that you need to have in place to be wildly successful selling high ticket for your business. Now, when I say high ticket, what does that mean? It means if you're selling something that's $35, $49, it's a small ticket price, then this may not be exactly for you. You can do a lot of what you need to do in other ways. When I say high ticket, it's a product, a service, or offering that's thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars or more. Okay, so it doesn't matter what the industry is, but a high ticket offering is something in that regard. So there are 3 critical elements that everybody needs to have in place to be wildly successful in sales and particularly in high ticket selling. And I'm going to break down what those 3 are right now. So the first is, and we're going to go right back to the most important element. The first is you need to have the right entrepreneurial sales success mindset. You have to have the right mindset. Now, I know a lot of people say, well, yeah, mindset plays a role in everything. It does, but it particularly plays a significant role in sales. And it does because the reality for most people is their mindset isn't correct in entrepreneurial sales. They are thinking about themselves, their business, their bills, the fact that they need to close new business and generate revenue. They have responsibilities. Maybe they have payroll, a lease. They have all of these things that are taking up space in their mind. And their focus, their mindset is not on the most important thing that it needs to be wrapped around. And that thing is this: your clients success, your client's success. See, the reality is, no matter how amazing or great that you are in what you offer, and no matter how impressive your product, service, or offering is, nobody cares. And I don't want to burst anybody's bubble, and I'm not trying to be negative to any entrepreneur that's watching this. Nobody cares. Now, I say that to highlight this. People do not care about how great you are, how amazing your background is, how impressive or technologically advanced your technology is. They don't care about anything that you offer, anything that you do, anything that it's about. What they truly care about and are most focused on is the impact that what you offer will have on them. What will it do for them? What result will they get, and what impact will it have on themselves? What impact on their life, their finances, their family, their business, whatever it is that you are working on. So the right entrepreneurial mindset is to dial in the fact that it's not about you, it's not about your offering, it's all about serving your prospects and clients and creating a massive positive impact for them, whatever that may look like. That's number one. Number two, you need to build a sales success network, a sales success network. Now, what do I mean when I say that? Well, I don't necessarily mean you need to build your own company, your own organization. You don't have to have 100 employees to be successful, but you do need to dial in and get other people's help to be able to move your business forward. And those people might take the shape of people that become sources of warm and friendly introductions or referrals to you. They may be strategic partners. They may be alliances that you work side by side with in the business, people that have a parallel business to yours that could support your clients. But the reality is this: when you're an entrepreneur, and if you're a solopreneur, particularly pay close attention to this, you can't do it all yourself. You can't. You have to involve other people in that process. And the sooner you can build out your own sales success network, the better off you are. One thing that all elite salespeople and sales professionals know and understand is that it's not entirely up to them. It's up to other people. And the more they can mobilize and empower other people to help them build their business, the greater their success is. So that second category, you need to build a sales success network. And the third thing, when you are an entrepreneur selling high ticket, you need to build the right sales success systems. Sales success systems. Now, I don't care what your system is. I don't care what technology you use. I don't care what access you have to this or that. As long as you have a system that you can work on and repeat and scale up. So it doesn't matter what that system is. It does matter that it's scalable, easy to repeat. And let me give you a reason why and show you an example. So you picking up the phone and calling 100 people every day is possible. But you doing that long term is not realistic, and it's not scalable. So at some point, you need to get other people involved in the process. You need to get other people in your system. And ultimately, your system needs to be something that can continue to grow your business even when you are not working harder. See, if your system is that the way you get to the next level is by working harder, it's a broken system or a flawed system. Doesn't mean it's not going to be effective. It just means it'll be very challenging for you to scale it up. And when you're an entrepreneur, the other reality that you are dealing with is that clock. Time is your most valuable commodity. You only have so much time, so much energy, so much strength to put into what you're building. You need to get other people involved, and you need to have a system. So those are the three key areas that we need to focus on: a sales success mindset about the other person, the fact that you need your own sales success network, getting other people mobilized to help you be successful. You've all probably heard the phrase, many hands make light work. Well, it's absolutely true in sales. If somebody is introducing you to people and you don't have to find those people yourself, is that a powerful person to be connected to? Of course. They're doing some work for you. That network is key. and sales success systems, things that are scalable that you can build up and move. Now, let's talk about, as an entrepreneur, the two categories of how you need to view your business, two areas of mastery that you need to be able to truly master and dominate to be successful. When you're an entrepreneur, these two things are critical to your success. First is what we like to call the science of selling, right? The science of selling. See, there's two categories. There is the science and there's the art. Now, I start with science. Why? Because art is something that you can refine and work on as you go, but science is a bit different. Science is your numbers. Science is all of the raw data that goes into what you do. You know, what's the average client size that you have? How many prospects do you need to engage to get to the results you need? How many do you need to convert? Do you know those things for yourself right now? Because if you're an entrepreneur and you don't know those things about your own business right now, you don't know what your average client size is, you don't know how many prospects, actual prospects, you need to engage to net a client, and how many of them do you need to convert to reach your goals. If you don't know those numbers inside and out, backwards and forwards, you're missing an opportunity. You're missing an opportunity. So let me give you some very, very basic parameters for you to master as an entrepreneur selling, right? First, take a deep breath. I'm not a huge numbers guy. I keep it simple, so don't worry. We're going to get through this together. It's not going to be this crazy, extreme diagram. We're going to keep it simple. And I focus around a ratio that is a very, very stable and consistent success ratio that you can replicate and follow for yourself. It's called the 10-3-1 ratio. Okay, 10-3-1 ratio. For every 10 suspects, people that you engage potentially about what you do, doesn't matter what your industry is or what you offer. For every 10 people that you talk to as a potential suspect for what you do, 3 of them become what we call a prospect. And the difference between a suspect and a prospect is somebody that's qualified, that has all the things that you need to actually be able to work with them. And we'll dig into what some of those things are, but the reality is it's the basic things you need to know. They have a need, they have the budget. Are you dealing with the right decision maker? Is it an urgent concern, or is it something that down the road they'll deal with? There are certain things that qualify them as a prospect. But for every 10 people you talk to, it should net down to at least 3 of them becoming qualified as a prospect. Now, the 10-3-1 ratio is all about making sure that from those 10, you get to the 3 that are qualified, at least 1 converts to being a client. So if you're selling high ticket, and let's say your offering is $5,000 and you want to generate $20,000 in a month, you know you need 4 sales. Well, to get to 4 sales, you know you need to have 12 prospects, 12 potential prospects that could be interested in what you are doing. And to get to that 12, you know you need to have 40 people that you talk to across that month to get to that 12 that eventually leads to your 4 sales. So some easy ratio numbers to fix in your science, your personal science, is to understand, are you on track for a 10-3-1 ratio? Now, the reason why this is a really, really good ratio to use is the average person, whether you knew this or not, the average person is actually better than that 1 in 3. The average person will probably close more than that over time. In fact, if you were to look at those 3 prospects in the 10-3-1 ratio, 1 of them will become a client in the short term. 1 of them will become a client in the near term, down the road, maybe just a little bit, call it 6 months, whatever, somewhere in there, you probably will work with them. And then that 3rd is the one that you will never convert. Probably never will actually work with them. On average, that is the way it breaks out. Now, what you will learn about consistency is the more consistent you are in your business, the more consistent you become in generating that ratio, you will find that business will start to stack on itself. 1 month, you get 3 sales, but then you had 4 people that were in that middle category that didn't yet sign with you, but are still considering it. Well, that can carry over and spill over. So the real battle, the real struggle, the fight that we're in is to win that middle prospect. If one of them was going to work with you anyway, and one of them was never going to work with you, we're working to win that second prospect, that one in the middle, the one that takes you from having 1 sale in that week to 2 sales in that week, can completely change the outcome of your results, your business, your life, right? Just winning that second one. And see, that's where the art comes in. So the science, there's a lot of other parameters to science, knowing your numbers, understanding them, making sure you understand your metrics. That's one piece. And that's where you should start. If you're struggling to figure out what your own personal metrics are, I would love to help you with that at any time. You actually can connect with me right on the banner here. It's playing. Just by accessing my digital assistant, you could schedule some time to talk with me. We'll talk about your metrics. But once you know those metrics, you can now focus on the art side of sales. See, the art side, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about the art. The art side of sales is what you say, how you communicate, how you position. It's truly an art form. It's truly an art form. Science is science. Numbers are numbers. You do what you plan out. You follow those numbers. You track, you monitor, and you make adjustments. But art is like a science experiment. You're playing around. You're trying different things. You're working towards making your results better by mastering the art. And today we're going to dig into that quite a bit, because one of the areas that I think people struggle in sales, especially when they are entrepreneurs, is in the art side of what they do. See, we talk about sales success systems earlier, right? Systems to generate prospects, systems to create lead flow. They are what I call client acquisition systems, or CASs as an acronym. Now, a client acquisition system could be anything. It could be you emailing people, you going on LinkedIn or social media, you buying leads, you getting paid traffic. It doesn't matter what it is. It's a client acquisition system to drive traffic to you. It could also be hiring somebody else to go get the client. It's what the system is. It's a client acquisition system. When companies hire me to fix what's broken in sales in their business, there's almost inevitably 2 main categories that they struggle in. Sometimes they struggle in 1, sometimes they struggle in 2, but these 2 main categories are where we focus. First is the client acquisition system. How are they bringing clients in? How is that happening? What does the lead generation look like? What's the lead flow look like? Is it something that's organic? Is it something that's paid? Does it work? Now, here's what I'm going to say about client acquisition systems, especially if you're an entrepreneur. So listen, pay attention, right? If you can master organic lead generation and create leads just from some of the simple things that you do yourself, you are head and shoulders above people in that process, because it's saving you money. It potentially may cost you a little bit of time, but if you can build momentum doing it, it can change everything for you. But you need to have a client acquisition system that's duplicatable and scalable. So maybe organically you can generate enough leads to get your business going and keep it going, but is it really scalable? So when I look at a client acquisition system, the question becomes, how do you scale it? How do you go from 4 clients to 40 clients in a month, right? Is it possible? Can you do it the way you're currently doing it? Most companies struggle with that. And it could be a struggle early, it could be a struggle later. But if your client acquisition system is not duplicatable and scalable, that's an area that needs improvement. The second area is what I like to call your simple and easy to follow sales process. A simple and easy to follow sales process. Now, those two areas are where most people struggle: client acquisition system and a simple and easy to follow sales process. And they fall under the art side of things, because how you do it can play a major role. So let's talk about a simple and easy to follow sales process. See, most people have done some type of investigation into getting better in sales. Not everybody, but most. I don't care if you're watching a YouTube video. I don't care if you went through a sales course. I don't care if you went to training. You grabbed a book, whatever it was. Most people have educated themselves a little bit around sales. Now, here's the problem with that approach. Here's the problem. There's a lot of amazing information that's out there. But the problem is, especially for an entrepreneur, the problem is it is all written and designed in a way that it follows somebody else's voice, somebody else's tone, somebody else's style, right? Did you ever read a book on sales or marketing or anything in general and read what somebody says or does or tries and say to yourself, oh, I can't do that. That's not me, right? Maybe you're that person right now as an entrepreneur that is saying to yourself, I'm not a salesperson. I can't sell. Well, I'm going to tell you, there couldn't be anything further from the truth. There just couldn't. And we're going to talk about that now. In fact, from now to the end of this live stream, we're going to be talking about that, because it all follows under that easy to follow sales process. Okay, that easy to follow sales process. Now, why is this important? Well, I think it's important to understand that mastering your easy to follow sales process and staying on track is super important to your success. Doesn't matter what your industry is, but it has to be done in a way that's natural and comfortable for you to get the right results. So let's talk about that. Let's take a couple of minutes and break this down. If you try to talk in somebody else's voice and you are not yourself in how you do it, if you try to follow somebody else's style or somebody else's pattern or somebody else's sales approach, say this, if they say this, then say that, right? If you're reading a list of objections and rebuttals and you are figuring out how to navigate all of that when it doesn't sound like you, pay attention to this. The split second you try to sound like somebody else, and it doesn't matter who it is, if you start trying to sound like somebody else, you will come off as uncomfortable in the eyes of your prospect or your client. And when you are uncomfortable in front of your prospect or client, that can only be perceived one way. Two, but it all falls under one category. When you're uncomfortable and the nerves are showing because you aren't speaking the way you might normally speak, people only see two different things through that. One is you're nervous and disorganized and therefore unprofessional. The second is you're nervous because you're not telling them the truth, or you're in some way deceiving them towards what it is you're trying to describe. That's really it. As human beings, when we are uncomfortable and we aren't normally ourselves and it shows to somebody else, that's how they interpret those things. Now, the closer you can become to speaking in your own voice, your own tone, your own style, the greater your success is. But you need to have a track to follow, because here's the other problem with sales. When I work with companies, many times somebody will explain their sales process to me, and it is different with every single prospect. It's different. Like, well, with this person we did this, and with this person we tried that. And I'm like, well, where is the consistency? How do you know what's next? How do you know what to do if something else happens, if every single time it's different? So it needs to be consistent and it needs to be easy to follow. So I'm going to give you all a simple, easy to follow sales process that you can duplicate and stay on track with without getting off track in the many different ways that sales can take you. So let's break this down. This is what I call my 5V method, or the VOW method, for a sales process. Now, look, this is not the only way to do it, but this is a simple, easy way for you to keep things on track, not get distracted by the things that can pull you in opposite directions, and stay focused on your objective. The 5V or VOW method. You guys all remember school and your vowels? You know, A-E-I-O-U. Pretty simple, easy to remember for everybody. Well, that's your sales process. That's your easy, simple to follow sales process. A-E-I-O-U. And you just need to remember where you are in that process. So let's break that down. A stands for attract. Now, attract means you need to be attractive to your prospect. And I don't mean attractive in a physical way. I mean attractive in a charismatic way. People want to talk to you. People want to hear from you. People want to know what you do and how it may impact them. There needs to be a level of attraction between you and your prospect. Now, that attraction can take many shapes and forms, but at the end of it, they need to want to learn more because there's something about you that draws them in. If you are flat, if you are monotone in what you say and do, if you don't express any excitement, enthusiasm, or passion around what you're talking about, well, guess what? That's how they're going to read you. And when that happens, you aren't attracting them. In the very least, you're repelling them. It could be even worse, but let's just say they're keeping you at arm's length because there's no attraction about what you're saying and doing. So you need to attract people. And it starts with every single interaction. Email, text, phone call, Zoom call, in-person meeting. However you come at them and see them, there needs to be a level of attraction towards what you're doing. It draws them in. It brings them close to you. Now, when you're an entrepreneur, that's really, really important. Super important. Because if you're going to sell high ticket, you need to break that down. You need to make sure that you're attracting the majority of people. The more opportunities you get, the greater your sales results could be. If you are not attracting people in your sales process, well, that creates a problem. The second area, the second letter in the acronym, E, for engage. You need to engage people, truly engage them. Now, I know I might upset some people when I share this next topic, but sales funnels, landing pages, marketing, a lot of this stuff is considered or perceived as engagement in today's world. When I say engage, I mean you are truly interacting with them and building rapport. Not that they're landing on a funnel or a landing page or your website or anywhere else. That's important. That's awareness. But when I say engage, I mean you're engaging them. You're building rapport. You're getting to know them. You're understanding who they are, what they're about. That has to be genuine and real. See, a lot of people struggle with sales simply because they don't understand how to communicate anymore. Or maybe they never did. We have a whole generation of people right now that are used to advanced technology. There are people, and I'm not in any way saying this is bad. I'm just saying that the byproduct of this is that people have lost the skill of communicating. Years ago, before technology, somebody in sales was forced to communicate. There was a high degree of education that was involved in sales. You needed to educate your prospect because they couldn't find information any other way. Imagine what life was like before websites, before mobile phones, before the ability of texting, before YouTube, before the internet. Like, the salesperson did all the education. Maybe there was a little bit of print, maybe there was a brochure, whatever, but the salesperson was the majority piece of the education in the process. But now, today's consumer, they can find whatever they need to find online. They can connect with anything they need to see on YouTube. They can find explanations. The degree of education is much, much higher. Now, what that means is your level of engagement needs to be sharper. But instead, what's happened with a lot of people is they've deviated from that. They let technology do all the work instead of truly engaging. And I'm not saying technology is bad. Technology can do so many things for us and help us in a lot of ways. But engagement needs to be genuine. If you want to really sell high ticket as an entrepreneur, you need to look people face to face. And I don't care if it's in person or online, but they need to know the passion behind what you're doing and how committed you are to their success. Engagement has to be real. The third acronym, third letter in the acronym, impact. Now, this is going to be one that we're going to spend a couple of minutes on. Impact is critical to your success. Critical to your success. Why is that? Because your whole mission in what you do is to positively impact the people that you serve, your prospects, your clients, the people that you're working with. Your job is to positively impact them. The problem with people is when it comes to sales, they want to spend all their time talking about how amazing their product is, their service, their offering, the features, the benefits. They want to get into all of that. And I'm not saying there's not a place and time for that, but when you're an entrepreneur and you spend 80% of the time on your sales interaction talking about yourself and your business and only 20% of what is important to your prospect, you have it backwards, my friend. It should be the other way around. Your prospect, your client, the person you're trying to serve should be talking 80% of the time. You should be listening intently, listening to understand. Because if you are doing all the talking, you are learning nothing about them. Nothing about them. For you introverts that are out there, for you people that feel that they aren't salespeople, you're an entrepreneur, you're an expert, you're a master of what you do, but you don't know how to sell it. Do you know how to ask people questions? How to listen? Do you know how to identify how what they share with you could be addressed, fixed, or improved by what you offer? Because right there, my friend, is how you sell. If you're going to sell high ticket as an entrepreneur, you need to become very, very good at asking impact-focused questions. Questions that are all about the impact that a prospect receives. Now, here is what happens with a lot of people. They spend their time, their energy focusing on the product or service or offering that they provide. They think that that is going to get that person where they need to go. Many times they focus on price. They put the price in front of the prospect and they think, well, here it is. If they can afford this, great. Here's the breakdown. And this is what I want everybody to understand. So all you entrepreneurs out there that feel you struggle with sales, master this one skill, okay? People buy when they are in an emotional state. People make buying decisions in an emotional state. Now, I don't mean emotional as in broken down, crying. I mean emotional as in some connection to something that draws feelings in their life that makes them feel something genuine. When that happens, that's when people buy. So let's use an example. And I use this example often in training and coaching that I do, but it's a very relevant one. Let's say you are working with a prospect or a client, and what you do adds money to their bottom line, adds money to their business, to their life, whatever it is. Let's say as a result of the work that you do, you're selling high ticket. The result of the work that you do generates $200,000 in added value to that business owner. Well, what a lot of people will do, they will sell on the idea of, hey, I'm going to get you an ROI. It costs $20,000, but you're going to get $200,000 of value. So that's $180,000 improvement. And it makes sense. And some people will buy on that logic set. But here's the problem. Logic doesn't move the needle in high ticket selling. Emotion does. Emotion does. So here's how you're going to handle that differently when you're an entrepreneur and you're selling high ticket. Instead of worrying about what they get for that $20,000, why don't we spend some time talking about what impact it has on them and what the greater vision could be? And we'll extend the example. So $200,000 is the benefit that your client receives. How I would ask the questions would be, well, Mr. Customer, if I was to slide a check for $200,000 across the desk for you right now and put it in your hands, first question, what would you do with the money? And they may say, well, I would expand marketing. I know if we expanded marketing, we would be able to generate more business. I would say, that's great. How much more business do you think you could generate? Well, we probably could at least add another $500,000 in revenue from additional lines. That's amazing. Now, let me ask you, what else would you do with that money? Oh, we easily invest in adding 1 or 2 more people in our sales department to drive more revenue. That's spectacular. How much does the average salesperson generate in your business, new revenue for your company? Well, at least $250,000 or more per salesperson on average. So if you added 2 people, that would be another $500,000 in revenue as a result of that, correct? Yes. So just in those 2 things, and I'm assuming you would be able to do some other things with the $200,000, but just in those 2 things, you've been able to add an additional $1 million to your business. What would you do if you had that? And then you start digging deeper. Let me ask you this. What impact would that $1 million have on your business? What impact would it have on your personal life? Maybe it's not just about the money. And maybe the client says to you, if we had an extra $1 million in the business, I'd finally be able to take the vacation I've been promising my wife, my spouse, my partner for years. Haven't been able to do it. I've been chained to the business, and now I can finally do that. What would that be worth to you, Mr. Customer? Would it be worth $20,000 to be able to finally take that vacation? Absolutely. What impact would it have on your business? Do you think this would provide additional stability for your company? Yes. What would that look like? See, those questions are putting that person in an emotional state, in what I call the impact phase of the sales process. Now, if all I'm talking about is $20,000 to get $200,000, some people may look at that and say, hey, that's amazing. That's great. But do you really think $20,000 matters that much to that person who now realizes it could be worth $1 million, or better yet, gives them peace of mind because their family's happier or stabilizes their company? Do you really think it's about $20,000, or could that number be $200,000? See, when an entrepreneur is selling high ticket, one of the biggest challenges that they face is belief that their offering is worth what they are trying to charge. It's one of the biggest barriers. If you're sitting here right now and you've said this to yourself, and obviously you don't have to put anything in the chat, you don't have to mention it, but ask yourself this question. Have you ever asked or wondered, is what I offer worth what I'm trying to charge? Or do you think you should charge more? Do you think you should charge more? I'll tell you, if you're really good at what you do, if you're a master, if you are an entrepreneur who's elite in your area and you're struggling with sales, I bet you should charge more. Not because you've proven it yet, but because the value of what you do is in impact. People aren't paying for your product or service. They're paying for the impact it has. If you do a better job of defining that and putting that around the value of what they're paying for and what they're getting, people will buy. People will buy, and they'll buy high ticket. It also makes it easier for you to upsell, to sell bigger packages, larger amounts, because the better you get at describing impact, the more important it is. Now, notice the order of things: attract, engage, impact. Nowhere in there yet have I mentioned what I do, what my offer is, what my product, service is. Why is that? Because it doesn't matter yet. But by getting people to talk through some of this stuff, now I used a financial example, but you can just as easily find out those things without putting an offer in front of somebody. By going through this process in this order, you now understand what you need to do to win that client's business. The impact has been exposed. See, when people sell only on price, that's a logical decision. I spend 20,000, I net $200,000 in value. That's based on logic. But when you sell talking about all of the other things that somebody could get and accomplish by working with you, the impact, that changes everything. That's an emotional place. That's where they buy. Now, impact is firmly entrenched in the middle of the sales process. And this is important, entrepreneurs, so pay attention, because things don't go according to plan all the time. You ever been in the middle of a sales call and halfway through it, an emergency pops up and the client needs to leave and ends the call, and then you have to go back to a call again or jump on another call, another Zoom call, another meeting, right? Well, here's the problem where a lot of people struggle. They go back to that meeting and they go right back to where they were in that sales process. Maybe they were further along, not realizing that the emotion around the things they talked about, where it was up here when you were talking to them, a week later, it's down here. See, there's a line in the sales process. I call it the impact line. It's a line where people go from logically thinking to emotionally thinking in your interaction. You don't ask people to buy when they're in the logical phase. You ask them to buy when they're in the emotional phase. Now, that is critical because when your sales process is broken up, when it turns into 2 calls or 3 calls, you now have an easy to follow process to get back on track. You don't go back to the close, even when you thought they were ready to sign. You go back to the impact phase. You go back to where they were emotionally talking about the things that were important to them, because that brings them back to the emotional state. The emotional state. Now, this is super, super important. When it comes to the next letter in the acronym, O, your offer, by following this process in the right order as an entrepreneur, you now have the ability of adjusting what you say and how your offer looks to match what they've shared is most important to them. Maybe 3/4 of the things you do aren't important to them, but the one thing that's super important to them is something you do very, very well. Well, that tells you where you're going to focus. So you now have the opportunity to modify and tailor your offer around what they described for you in the impact phase. It creates a much higher likelihood for success. When your offer is aligned with what they are saying is most important to them, your likelihood for success goes through the roof. And finally, the last letter in the acronym, the AEIOU, is U for understanding. Understanding. And what I mean when I say that is there needs to be a shared mutual understanding as to the next steps in the process. And I don't care if it was a phone call, a Zoom call, an in-person meeting, whatever it is, at the end of every interaction, you need to have a shared understanding as to what's next. The next step is I call you tomorrow. The next step is we meet next week. The next step is I send you a contract. The next step is whatever it is, it needs to be shared. I've done ride-alongs with hundreds and hundreds of field sales representatives, and you'd be amazed how many times they'd shake hands, the end of the meeting, everybody is loving what they talked about, but there is not a shared understanding as to the next step. It just hangs there. If you have a list of prospects that you've spoken to about your product or service and nothing's happening, nothing's moving, go back and take a look at how you wrapped up your last engagement. Did you really have a shared understanding about what was next? Maybe you thought you did. Maybe you thought, well, the next step is logically they're going to look at this and decide. Maybe they thought, well, it's great. I'll have it in the file when the time's right. I'll take a look at it. 2 different places. You need to have a shared understanding. And how you do that is at the end of your call, you just basically express it. Say, I want to make sure, Mr. Customer, that we're on the same page. It's my goal to be able to work with you and help you in these particular areas. Now, you've asked me to put together some specific information. I'm going to deliver that to you within 48 hours. And at the end of that, I'd like us to book another call for us to discuss this in more detail. Are we on the same page? Yes, great. We move forward. If you're not on the same page, you have a broken process and you are not in alignment, with that sales process. Now, the VOW method, the 5B method is so important to your success, because if you can master the organization of that sales process, you will never forget where you are. If you do have a breakdown in the process and you jump back a week later, a month later, 6 months later, you go back to the things that were important to them. You get them into that impact phase and you start talking about what that may look like. Now, here's why that's critical to your success. And this is really, really important for entrepreneurs. Many times entrepreneurs and people in general think that they need to have some masterful close to close business. And I'm going to share with you a closing technique that I've used to generate hundreds of millions of dollars. The same thing. I'm not that smart. It's the same thing over and over again, different businesses, different industries, different offerings, same process. And it's this: you set the right expectation at the early part of the process that you're going to ask questions. And when you follow the sales process I just defined, and you put people in a place where they are sharing with you what's important, they are sharing with you what impact it would have, the money it would save them, how it would stabilize their business, how it would save their relationship because they can go on vacation, whatever the emotional reason was, by getting them to share and open that up, your simple closing technique is, Mr. Customer, I really feel for what you said about that. It resonates with me. I get it. I understand. I'm sure that's super, super important to me. I get it. Let me ask you a simple question. I told you at the beginning that I was going to ask you some things, and I appreciate you answering the question, but I have one question for you. Would you let me help you do it? Would you let me help you make that happen? Simple, powerful, impactful. Would you let me help you do it? Now, why is that simple? Why is that powerful? Because if you set the expectation the right way and you ask them what's important and they've shared that with you, you positioned yourself as a trusted advisor and resource. Because I promise you this, my friends, nobody is going to that degree, the depth of asking those types of questions the same way you would. And when you ask them, could you help them with it? They're already in an emotional state to want to take action, right? Many times you don't even have to ask that question. Many times they'll say, so how can you help me with this? Or what's next? Can you do this for me? Can you help me get there? They'll ask you. But if they don't, ask them, would you let me help you do this? Now, I know in an hour, it's really, really challenging to be able to cover everything that you might need to know and master as an entrepreneur in selling. And the simple fact is, if you're an entrepreneur, you face a lot of different challenges. Sales is just one of the many challenges that you face. It would be my pleasure to help you navigate through that, master the things that are required, make sure that you have all the right systems in place, and most importantly, make sure your sales process is dialed in for your success. And I wanted to offer an opportunity for everybody on today's live stream to be able to get the help that they may need. If you're an entrepreneur and you are selling a high ticket offering and you aren't crushing your sales goals, I want to help you do it. I've opened up some time in my calendar over the next 5 days to have one-on-one conversations with people to help them take that next step in their journey as an entrepreneur and help them sell high ticket. You can reserve your seat by texting the word sales to 409-509-7355. You'll access my digital assistant from there. My digital assistant will be able to work with you to be able to schedule time in my calendar. There's no cost or obligation to scheduling time with me. It's an opportunity for you in a strategy session to learn how you can take your sales to the next level. If I can help you in any other way in sales, it would be my pleasure. It has truly been an honor to be able to cover this information with you. I've served you well. If I can help you in any other way, please reach out. This is Joe Beck, founder of The Sales Activist, and this has been High Ticket Selling for Entrepreneurs. We'll see you soon.